Hello and welcome to episode 23 of Friending the Mirror. I'm author and professional speaker Don Shaw, and I'm happy to have you watching this with us today. My guest today is Kaelin Ball. She is very deeply involved with the Sturge-Weber Foundation, and the title of our episode is called Born to Inspire, Sturge-Weber and More. Kaelin, when Kaelin was born, she was diagnosed with Sturge-Weber syndrome. So her parents did what any loving parents would do. They founded a nonprofit dedicated to improving the quality of life for people with Sturge-Weber and associated port wine birthmark conditions. From a very young age, Kaelin has advocated on behalf of the Sturge-Weber Foundation, as well as an organization called Positive Exposure, which utilizes the visual arts to celebrate the richness of human diversity and to expand and challenge conventional standards of beauty. Kaelin has become a disability advocate who focuses on rare disease, beauty, and self esteem. She has done media interviews as well as spoken at live events, including conferences, and has even spoken before Congress. Kaelin earned her master's degree in disability studies in 2014. Welcome, Kaelin. I'm so happy to have you with me here today. Could we just start by having you explain how the Sturge-Weber Foundation got started?
Sure. I just want to start off by saying I really appreciate being invited today. This is a really exciting experience, and so I'm really glad to be here. As you said, the foundation was started by my mom when I was born. At the time, there was no information about Sturge-Weber, and she started the foundation in our basement. So there was definitely a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into it. And it's grown to this, really big thing where we have over, I think, like 3,000 members right now. And so it's definitely grown, and it's this really nice like community and family where, parents don't have to be alone anymore.
Well, that's really great because I mean, anytime any organization can be come into existence, that really just reaches out and helps other people. Because I know
Mhm.
how tough it is for parents. I know that my parents had their challenges dealing with my situation.
Mhm.
I mean, that your parents must be that takes a lot of drive as well as skills like fundraising and whatnot to get a foundation started.
Um,
Um,
it was really exciting for my mom too within those first couple of years because she earned the Betty Ford Award. So that's a really big highlight for her that, this really small organization that was in our basement got, this excitement and celebration by Betty Ford. So it's one of her really cool things. But in addition to helping the community too, we also do a lot of research funding, which not a lot of other, port wine steam, foundations tend to do. So it's really awesome that we were able to find the gene.
Yeah, that is, I mean, I have to admit, that's one of the things that kind of slowed me down in thinking about trying to get anything started. It's like, I'm not very good at fundraising.
Mhm.
I know you have to be able to do that in order to support any type of a nonprofit organization. But despite the idea of nonprofit, you still have to make money to keep going.
Yeah, exactly. And that's always been a challenge, because parents are busy paying for medical bills and working 2 and 3 jobs. And so it can definitely be a strain depending on, how severe their kid is with Sturge-Weber.
So let me ask you, can you kind of explain your medical conditions and how they affect your life in general?
Sure, absolutely. So Sturge-Weber is mostly comprised of glaucoma, which obviously can lead to blindness, my birthmark, and then also seizure activity. And normally there's like 3 different types. So you can have Sturge-Weber and not have the birthmark, but usually you have like a birthmark on your brain, which tends to mess with like the seizures and your vision and all that kind of stuff. And then I forget what the other one is, but then the one that I have is obviously the one that presents itself with the birthmark, glaucoma. I haven't really had seizures since I was a really little baby, which is good. But we've had people that, seize all the time when they're young and end up, having half their brain taken out, which is great because then it stops the seizures. But, I'm also really, really lucky because there are kids who have so much brain involvement that they can't speak, can't really move, like are in a vegetative state. And we also just had one like that who passed a couple months to maybe like a year ago. And he was 35, and he was like so awesome considering the fact that he couldn't really speak and do anything. But I definitely learned a lot from Danny. But then there's also other kids like me who are just, growing off and doing relatively normal things. So.
Yeah, I think most people are gonna, if they know anything about Sturge-Weber, what it is, they're gonna think about the birthmark, the port wine stain, because
Yeah.
that's obviously the most obvious attribute. It's very visible. And if I remember correctly, it has to be on the face. Is that part of the definition?
For Sturge-Weber, it has to be over at least one eye, because then you have the glaucoma involvement. But I mean, again, like a lot of the times, you essentially have like a birthmark on part of your brain, because then that also messes with, your thyroid and all those other kinds of medical things that can happen anytime you have like something. So.
And so I think that's something a lot of people, they think about it as being a physical attribute that's just on the skin. But what you're saying is it actually goes deeper, like all the way to affecting the organs effectively.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, the birthmark isn't just on the face. One of my really good girlfriends who has Sturge-Weber, like it's on almost her entire body. And some, people just have it over their eye and a little bit down on their cheek or, so everybody's different, which is really cool. So, yeah.
Now, is it possible to have the port wine stain birthmark and not have Sturge-Weber?
Absolutely. And there's the purple birthmark and then there's the brown birthmark. So you can have just a regular birthmark, that's purple on, your leg or any other place within the body or on the body. But in order for it to be Sturge-Weber, it has to be over the eye, at the very least.
And affecting the eye.
And affecting like the brain, yeah.
Right. So, and now there was something else that the website mentions. It's Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Could you?
So Klippel-Trenaunay is basically, I mean, it happens in different forms, but in Sturge-Weber, you usually have the birthmark in that area, and it affects the fluid. So instead of exiting the body, the fluid just kind of ends up staying wherever that birthmark is. So the area gets enlarged and heavy. And a lot of times they have to go through several different skin grafts in order to try to like prevent it and get it fixed.
Actually, speaking of getting it fixed, that's one thing I forgot to put on my question sheet is what are the treatments or what are the possible treatments for Sturge-Weber, for port wine stain, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not like you can go to a plastic surgeon and get it removed, because in a birthmark like I have, the blood vessels are open, and that's why the purple stays there. And so what I do is I have to go and do laser treatment. So I go to the dermatologist, and and he does like these laser beams that go in and help try to close the vessel that's in the birthmark. And you kind of look like a leper for a while because you got all these spots on your face, but they disappear over time. So usually, 2 or 3 weeks after the surgery, you're back to quote unquote normal. But it takes a lot of effort to get the birthmark removed because I wasn't able to do it until I was little. I was a year and 8 months, I think, when I first started it. And that was back when the technology wasn't that awesome. So now the babies that are born that have a birthmark, they're so fortunate because they can just do a couple treatments depending on how big their birthmark is. And, it'll disappear or be a lot less noticeable, which is really cool. But so, yeah, I was one of like the first laser guinea pigs, which is also why it's taken so long. And I do still get laser treatments, and you can kind of see along the edges of my birthmark that sort of become white that laser treatment has helped. But it's also really important to get it because if you don't get it, like my lip has gotten thicker because even though I've done the surgery, the birthmark kind of gets affected that way too. So, that's another big reason to get laser because otherwise the birthmark just gets bigger and more dysmorphic and more like, just different.
So does the discolored part of the port wine stain, does it actually expand at all? Or does it just, when you say get bigger, it thickens? What is
Yeah, it thickens and gets darker. I mean, I haven't really noticed my birthmark get larger as I grew. It's relatively stayed the same size. But sometimes it can, depending on where it is. Because if you have it on your arm or your leg or something like that, obviously it has a better chance of growing because your body expands as you grow up. So.
Well, yeah. So basically, what the laser treatments do is they just kind of keep it at bay. They prevent
Yeah,
the
exactly. Yeah.
skin.
I mean, I could give you the full scientific terms of like, this makes this grow and that thing and that grows. But I mean, it's basically just, I consider it beauty maintenance. So some people go into the dermatologist to get their Botox or, to prevent their wrinkles or sunspots from coming. And that's basically kind of what I do with my birthmark is to prevent it from getting thicker.
Yeah, but that's a little more than just cosmetic, isn't it?
Well, it's not cosmetic. I mean, it's definitely, a medical treatment that's necessary. Sure, you do have to fight it sometimes depending on, your insurance company and all that. But again, it's not cosmetic maintenance, but it's definitely a maintenance thing. So, at least for me. But again, like if you have a kid that's 6 months old, you can take them and get the laser treatment now and really prevent that from even happening. So.
Okay, so talk about some of the medical conditions that are associated. You were talking about glaucoma.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that something that if you just left the birthmark alone, is that something that would, are there health issues that would?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the things that we've noticed that are connected to Sturge-Weber are still kind of being researched and vetted. But we definitely notice that sometimes there's migraines. That glaucoma is basically, again, a buildup of fluid in the eye. So you have to go and make sure that the eye pressure stays low because the higher the eye pressure gets, the more your vision fades. And so because of that, like I personally have no peripheral vision in either of my eyes because I have glaucoma in both eyes. So I'm still able to drive, which not everybody is, but I don't drive at night. I got to make sure that I really know the roads and know where I'm going, and just be extra cautious. So aside from the glaucoma and the migraines, usually there's thyroid, there's the seizures, so that can cause all kinds of different things. Sometimes there's stroke, because if you have a really bad seizure, then, you have all those stroke episodes and conditions. But again, like I said, there's a lot of other different things that they're trying to still investigate and vet and say, like, this gene mutation caused this.
So the seizures, is that something that you had to deal with?
Yeah, I did when I was little. I remember, I think the last time I really had a bad seizure was in high school. And it wasn't, mine have never been like, the really bad grand mal where you're on the floor just like flipping out. It was just me sitting in choir practice, and I felt out of body, and couldn't really focus on where I was. But again, like, everybody has different seizures depending on how much of the birthmark is on their brain, and all that kind of stuff. Because there are people who have seizures a couple of times a month, a couple of times a week. It just depends on their age and what happened in terms of Sturge-Weber.
Yeah, again, I think people just think about the port wine as being a cosmetic issue. Oh, she has a red mark on her face, but
Yeah.
I would not have known that it literally goes much deeper than that.
Yeah.
So the seizures are manageable with medication?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Most of the time. Again, it really just depends on how severe their neurological stuff is. Because sometimes the meds just fix it, but other times, you have to take out a half of the brain to kind of like get it to auto reset. So
Yeah, that's pretty serious, actually.
yeah, it is. Yeah.
So, kind of moving along a little bit, but related. Now, again, your parents, when you were born, your parents founded the Sturge-Weber Foundation. So you effectively grew up as the poster child for this foundation. Could you tell us what was that like, having that kind of on you from ever since you could remember?
Right. Yeah. She actually started it like about a year, I think, maybe a year and a half. She officially filed it. And I don't really remember when I was a baby, but I remember when I was about 6. And my mom wanted to take a picture of me, and she's like, "We're gonna put it on this brochure for church." And I still remember it just because it's always sort of incited that like model part of me, like, oh my gosh, like camera. So I mean, and that also was just kind of exciting to have that thrill of like, look at me. And that exact brochure ended up on it's Regis and Kathy Lee like a billion years ago. So that was kind of cool because his dermatologist was my dermatologist. So it's kind of like, that catch-22 of, oh, I'm awesome, like I'm on this thing or that thing, but at the same time, you're defined as this person who's different. Because in society, we kind of, label as disabled or different and not quote unquote normal. So it definitely, it was a struggle to be like, why don't these boys like me? Why do I have no friends? Like, because I'm just me. And then in the outside world, it's kind of like, well, she has this thing and look how awesome she is. So.
Well, and I think that's the attitude, and it sounds like your parents did a great job
They've
of,
kept me very humble for sure.
but not just humble. Actually, I was thinking not the opposite, but I was thinking more along the lines of making sure that you felt good about how
Mm-hmm.
you looked. I mean, they obviously you're not camera shy. They brought you into that, but it is a little tough, I would think, kind of being an object. And I'm sure your
Yeah.
parents didn't see you that way, but when you end up on a cover of a brochure and
Mm-hmm.
there's your face everywhere, do you ever feel like maybe you've kind of been objectified a little bit?
Um, I definitely did struggle with that as I was growing up because it was that catch-22 of like, there was a part of me that really liked being the center of attention and looked up to, but then the other part of me just wanted to be normal. And so that was definitely a really big struggle for me when I was growing up. Um, but I haven't, I think I've noticed since I got my master's and since I've done more advocacy that I feel objectified in a lot of different ways. There's obviously the part where, because I am a woman and I'm a little bit, more stacked than others, I get objectified because of my boobs or my curves or whatever it is. But then I also get objectified because they're judging me on my birthmark. And I get upset. I'm like, so why are you objectifying me because of my body, but you're not like, oh, she's really cute? Because, they're just two completely separate things. Um, and again, I think, honestly, I've come to that part of my life where if you're going to accept me, you're going to accept me for all of me, and not obviously don't objectify me, don't objectify women because that's bad. But, to really, truly accept me as I am for all of I am. But again, I mean, we all have those moments of like, I just wish I had a boyfriend. So,
Yeah, I understand that feeling because I did not have no one was interested in me in high school or even college for that
mm,
matter. I met my current husband after I graduated from college.
very cool.
But I met him because I went out and was doing work I enjoyed, volunteer work, and so we had that in common, and we met. And thankfully he's one of those people that my face just didn't matter to him. So there's definitely people out there like that. But now, did you have any luck romantically when you were in high school and college and such?
Definitely not in high school. There was like a guy that really liked me in college, but I really wasn't ready. It actually kind of scared me. And again, like that has been a really big struggle for me just growing up. I mean, luckily I had a mentor in my life that really allowed me to accept myself, and, feel gorgeous and beautiful. But I still don't trust that someone will like me or want to go out with me because I am different. So I tend to be standoffish and put that wall out. Um, but I've always felt like, someone will have to actually get to know me. And, because all my friends are like, well, once I get to know you, I completely forget that you have a birthmark. Um, Online dating just doesn't work these days, especially if you're different. Um, so it's been a challenge to find somebody that I can really trust, in terms of like romantics. So
Well, I do know a guy with Mobius syndrome. Mobius causes paralysis of your face, so your face essentially doesn't move. And he actually has successfully found someone online dating with a photo. So it is possible. I'm not saying it's normal or common, but it can happen. But I have to kind of laugh a little bit at what you said because I'm kind of the opposite. It's like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? What's not to like?
yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, so rather than be standoffish, I'm almost a little more, sometimes a little too much out there. But two of the things that you mentioned, I think are really really super important, and that is, well, we talked about it earlier. You had parental support. Your parents built you up. They gave you confidence to be who you are, and also the fact that you have a mentor. And I think those two things, because after a while, it's kind of like, oh yeah, they're just my parents. They're supposed to do that. But when you have,
Right. And that was definitely a key, like, changing point in my life. Because I was in seventh grade, and I found that mentor, and it definitely changed things, but it still took me a good, 15 plus years to really accept the fact that I am really awesome and that there is somebody out there. Because again, like in the beginning, you still don't have that self confidence and that trust and that courage to really hone and accept who you are. Sadly, it's a process and not instantaneous.
well, I want to talk about your work with positive exposure. So if you
Mhm.
could start by just talking about what is positive exposure, and then what was your involvement and how has that affected your life? Because I know you've mentioned it was very significant to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Positive Exposure is an organization that was started by Rick Wadati. He's a former fashion photographer. He used to shoot for all the top magazines, and he worked with Cindy Crawford and Kate Moss and like all those really high power, supermodels. And then he saw this girl who had albinism waiting for the bus, and he just got completely transformed. And so then he started, looking up albinism and taking pictures and really understanding like that difference. And then I forget what year it was. It was in the 90s. Um, the National Institute of Health had done the Human Genome Project, so they were finally able to decode DNA. And in celebration of that, they hired Rick out to do different pictorials of different genetic conditions. And my mom met Rick on a plane, and they sat next to each other. And so they started talking, and I'll never forget the day my mom came home, and she's like, "Guess what? You're going to be a model." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And she's like, "Yes, you are." And Rick really was that person that became a huge mentor in my life. Not only seeing difference and truly understanding beauty and who you are, but being able to build that self-confidence, which is just, it's so special that I not only am able to work with him, but I have, brought some of my really good girlfriends into positive exposure. And so, now Sarah, she also has Sturge-Weber. She's on the documentary that Rick just did about beauty, which is just so cool. And he's like, "I would have done you, but I've known you for like 15 years, so I couldn't put you in the movie." But it's really cool to like see how many lives he impacts and changes for the better,
What's the name of his movie?
On beauty.
Right. And where is that available?
It's not available on video yet. They basically take it to a bunch of different film festivals. So a lot of times it'll be in the Real Abilities Film Festival, which is really awesome in itself too, because it's a film festival dedicated to people with different disabilities. And so sometimes they're short documentaries, sometimes they're long, and sometimes they're actually like feature films that highlight a character with disability. So I highly recommend the Real Abilities Film Festival because you'll probably be able to see On Beauty there. But if you go on the website, they'll also, they should have a list of where you can find it.
Yeah, no, I actually have been on Positive Exposure's website, and one of the things that they do have is they have a series of short films done on various physically syndromes and whatnot that affect people physically, like Mobius syndrome, and I believe they have one on albinism as well. And they're very well produced.
Yeah, luckily that was through a bunch of grad students at Sarah Lawrence, and because they wanted to change the perception of how doctors learn about different genetic conditions, which is really awesome too. Because instead of looking at a medical test book and seeing black bars in front of your eyes and your private parts and all that, it really humanizes the different disability, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can get me going on the subject of medical professionals and treating people like human beings rather than objects. That's for sure. So anyway, and also for doctors to admit they don't know everything.
Yeah, I mean, and because I had just moved from New Jersey to Denver, and the doctor that I was seeing for neurology, he's like, "I've never heard of Sturge-Weber. You're my first and only patient that has it." And I'm like, "Okay, so here's all this information." And it's sad that there's so many different genetic, and just random conditions that doctors don't know about because there's so few cases.
Yeah, I was actually I did a webinar recently with Dr. Linda from the Vascular Birthmarks Foundation, and one of the things that we talked about is the fact that a lot of medical professionals don't know the difference between all these different vascular birthmarks, and the Port Wine stain falls into the category of vascular birthmark, as I'm
Yeah,
saying.
for sure.
And so, one of the programs I know that she's working on is coming up with a standardization in education for doctors around the world to be able to help medical professionals identify and diagnose and treat all these different types of birthmarks. So I just wanted to put that out there because I think that's, it's definitely important work.
Yeah, for sure.
medical professionals know what they're looking at. So, a little bit more, getting back to the Sturge-Weber Foundation, can you talk a little bit about the type of services the organization provides?
So we do a lot of different things. One part is research. So they do fellowships and grants for doctors to do different studies about Sturge-Weber. We obviously discovered the gene, which is really exciting. So now they're trying to do a mouse model to figure out how it occurs and how it grows, and if there's some way that you can prevent that from happening. The foundation has a couple different support groups for both parents and individuals that have Sturge-Weber. There's several Facebook groups too. So it's nice that they have this personal community where you're not alone. And because of the conferences that we do, I have 4 or 5 girlfriends that are all across the United States that all have Sturge-Weber, and so it's really fun to know that I can text them or Facebook them and be like, "This sucks," and they're like, "Yes, we know, but it'll be okay." And it's just it's just like seeing your best friend at a conference again. It's so awesome to catch up. But aside from the support and the research, they go out to different medical conferences and talk with the ophthalmologists and neurologists and dermatologists and, to get the young docs that are there knowledgeable about Sturge-Weber. And they also go to, different research conferences to see if there's anything that they can learn or think about. And they're always trying to, improve quality of life for the patients, and really, collaborate and think outside the box, which is just awesome because we're pretty much the only foundation that really provides that full-on family support. You can call the office and have a conversation about how difficult it is to pay the bills, or what doctor would you recommend for this, that, or the other, which I think is also really special about the foundation because we still keep it human and personalized, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, just from my point of view, I reach out to a lot of different organizations trying to find people who are willing to appear on my show. And I mean, I can tell the ones that are really, I mean, some of these organizations don't even respond to me. And if they're not responding to me, are they responding to the people that they're trying to help? So it kind of makes me wonder. And I obviously, because I have Kaelin on the show with me, I did get a response from the Sturge-Weber Foundation, and I'm glad I did. So let me ask you, the Facebook groups that you have, if someone were to go on Facebook and do a search, how would they find these support groups?
So the Facebook groups that we have, you have to be a member of the foundation and have Sturge-Weber. Because again, we're really vigilant about our members and we really want to protect them and their stories, and make sure that they have a good, solid support system. So that again, like you can join the general Sturge-Weber group if you want to find out about Sturge-Weber, and that's just their basic Facebook page. So you just search Sturge-Weber Foundation and it's right there. But again, if you know someone that, might have Sturge-Weber, the best way to get that information is to either call the office or go through their website. And then you'll be able to get, all that information that way.
Okay, so and one of the things I wanted to clarify is when you were talking about speaking at different medical related conferences and whatnot with eye doctors, ophthalmologists, and
Okay.
your audio kind of broke up a little. So I wanted to just clarify that you do, that the foundation does reach out to the medical community and try to help them understand the glaucoma issues related to Sturge-Weber and whatnot. So, when you speak at different conferences or when you personally do so, what are your topics? What is it that you speak about?
Again, it really just depends. Obviously, I'm really involved with the Sturge-Weber Foundation's conferences, so sometimes I'll facilitate different groups and workshops at the conference. But then there's also times, there's one that I have coming up for a different condition. And so, I'll just talk about my experiences like with self-esteem and growing up and how to find your voice and your self-confidence, which is really exciting because that's my first conference that I'll be doing outside of Sturge-Weber. But then I've also done I would consider them conferences, but not really, for positive exposure too. Because while they were out promoting on beauty and at the Real Abilities Festival, I spoke, I think 3 or 4 times, on behalf of Rick and with Rick to really talk about, Sturge-Weber and what that's like. So.
Okay, and then you also have a job. I mean, you.
Yes, I do, unfortunately. If I could get paid to be a speaker, that'd be awesome. But I currently work in retail since I just moved from New Jersey with my mom. So before I was in mental health and working in a crisis center. So, I could help find that support for people that had mental health issues. But right now I'm doing retail. So I work for a women's clothing store, which is, again, really awesome because I'm able to provide support, when they're going through something or they want to get dressed up for work or a special event. And, we had a woman come in a little bit before Valentine's Day, and she just was really struck by the fact she found out the guy she was dating was cheating on her and he was engaged. And, the fact that she was able to come to us even as a clothing store and be able to get that support and just we were just there to hug on her and be like, it's going to be okay. It's okay. And the fact that she even felt comfortable crying to us was just awesome. So obviously it sucks that she got cheated on, lied to, but it's really awesome that we're able to provide that support for our customers when they need it.
So your master's degree is in disabilities.
Yeah, disability studies.
Disability studies. So how do you apply that to? Probably not so much in your retail work, but in general. Are you? What is your dream job, for example?
I've always wanted to do some type of consulting with disability to help teach self-acceptance and self-esteem and, teaching doctors what it's like to have a disability and just really kind of do that kind of advocate work. But that's also why, I can't do that right now because I feel like I don't have enough experience. So I really would love to get a quote unquote real full-time job, that focuses on, program coordination or research or, anything that can really provide support and education for disability. Obviously, since I work in retail, I do customer service all the time, and I worked for Target for a while, so I'm really great at customer service. But it's just because I grew up with the foundation and being open about education for Sturge-Weber and being able to tell my story. I really down the road would really love to do something like that.
So do you have any active projects? You mentioned that you were going to be speaking at a conference that was not directly related to Sturge-Weber, but are there any particular projects or activities that the foundation has going or that you have going that you're excited about, that you're working on, that you want to share?
So I'm actually really not allowed to disclose what type of grant we got, but we did recently get this really awesome grant and opportunity to help figure out, what patients' needs are and how we can coordinate that with the doctors. And I wish I could tell you more than that, but I can't. But it's really exciting for the foundation.
So basically, you're going to be doing more patient advocacy work, is that, or just patient?
It's patient focused. It's a lot of different things. So just watch the website and it'll be there at some point.
Yeah, speaking of the website, I actually wanted to actually go there and show people that yes, this is the website, and find you can join. I don't see where, but apparently somewhere you can actually join. Is that would be like under?
I don't know if it's the get involved, but it's definitely if you do the contact connection, then you'll be able to send basically an email to the office, and so they can help point you into where it is. But again, what's really cool about being a member is because there is that spot where you can access stuff that's just for members.
So yeah, you can actually volunteer opportunities, but because you were talking about having to be a member
Mm-hmm.
in order to be able to access the website. So I'm just wondering where the membership information is.
Actually, I don't know because I haven't looked at the website in a while. So that's a really bad thing about, being the Sturge-Weber advocate is when you don't know the website by heart, unfortunately. But again, just definitely send them an email, or I think as the general email is swf@sturgeweber.org, I believe. So you can always just send them
Yeah,
a general email.
one of the things that you can also do is, I'm going to go back to it for a second. You can go and there's a contact. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
where is it? Let's see. Have to be in the right place. Yeah, if you go to contact and you can fill out the form. And like I say, they responded to me. See, there's you can join the mailing list. There's yeah, you probably have to be a member to get into the registry, but it looks like
Right.
you can get some information by just going and checking out the website, figuring out what they've got for resources, and of course, just contact them if you have any questions. Just contact them, and I'm sure
Yeah,
that
and
they will
again,
help
I
you.
think what's really cool about our foundation versus a lot of foundations is that registry that we have for members and patients that have Sturge-Weber. We keep a record of everything that happens. So then, the patient puts that in, and so then the doctors are able to find the data and say, oh, I should do research on this thing, and it's really cool to see the different patterns, and be able to give doctors that information.
So before I get into what I call my final question, the question that I ask everyone who is a guest on my show, I wanted to give you a chance to bring up anything that we haven't covered that you might want to talk about. Is there anything you'd like to add before we start the wrap up?
Um, I think I don't know if it's true, but I feel like, I kind of make it sound easy that finding the self-esteem is great and it just magically happens. And Rick did start that process when I was in seventh grade. But, I had a lot of stuff happen through high school and I really had to learn who I was. And, luckily I still have the support and I have the support of the girls that have Sturge-Weber. But again, like if you just do those affirmations every single day, which I did, and I had this chalkboard when I was younger, and it said, "You are gorgeous, you are sexy, you are beautiful." And when you look at that every day, or like put an affirmation on your mirror, it's a lot easier to internalize it and be like, "Yes, I truly do rock," and to build that self confidence.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people tell me that I just kind of exude confidence, and the reality is I don't always feel that. And it took a long time for me to really feel as good about myself and as comfortable in my skin that I am. And it does. It is something that takes time. And I agree about affirmations. And as we discussed before, about having a support system. I mean, it definitely helps that I had a supportive family. I still do. And I have friends, and I'm happily married and have been so for 20 years. So it helps when you have that kind of support system. But I also know that one of the things I had to do was work to make my attitude more positive. And that kind of goes along with the affirmations, being able to start believing, not just telling yourself stuff, but actually start believing it because it's true. And ultimately, yeah, like what Kaelin was saying earlier, we have to decide that we are beautiful, however we want to define beauty. And that really, if people have an issue dealing with us, it's their problem, not ours. I mean, unless we're jerks, and I imagine that some people with differences are jerks. But frankly, as long as we are decent human beings, we deserve to be treated like decent human beings, and we should treat everyone else as if they are a decent human being until they prove otherwise. So, Kaylin, I'm going to ask you one more question. If you had advice for someone out there, either with Sturge-Weber or with an appearance issue that they're not quite as comfortable with, what would be your advice? What is your recommendation? Something that they could do today, tomorrow, right away to start them on a path towards feeling better about themselves, being happier, however you want to define that.
Again, like I said earlier, I think it really starts with like doing the affirmations and really believing positive things. It sounds really stupid to use dry erase marker on your mirror to remind yourself when you look at yourself in the mirror how awesome you are and how capable you are. But it really is important. I mean, luckily I had Rick, but if you can helpfully find someone that really believes in you that's not your mother, then it's just magic and transforming.
Yeah, and you actually didn't come out and say it before, but I kind of wondered if Rick was the mentor that you were talking about. And I mean, here's someone that I would love to get in touch with Rick and have him on my show to talk to me about his work. But he's hard to get a hold of because he's so good at what he does. He's so successful at advocating for beauty. And I mean, I guess you were saying he's even getting hard for you to get in touch with. But
Yeah, absolutely.
the point is, it is so important to have a mentor. And when you have someone who is that passionate about what they do, that helps. But it doesn't have to be a Rick who is almost becoming a celebrity in his own right. It just needs to be somebody who cares about you, who's genuine, and who helps make you feel like you're a beautiful, normal human being. So, any last thoughts before I launch into my conclusion there, Kaylin? And I just want to say thank you so much for being on with me today. It's been a pleasure. I haven't had a bad guest on my show yet. They've all just been fantastic people with great stories. So, any last thoughts, Kaylin?
um I don't know, just be brave. Sometimes it's really hard to be confident and true to yourself. But once, if you really do just, be brave, and it's it's really, really hard, but it's really awesome because that's how you develop that self-esteem and self-confidence. And it's okay to not answer questions, because I definitely have days where I'm like, no, I don't want to tell you why I'm different. And it's really hard to, tell some 5 or 6 year old that's never seen a birthmark before that it's okay to be different and that we're all different. And my birthmark isn't ugly, and I don't, look like this, that, or the other thing. It's just something that happened. And so again, that takes courage and bravery too, to be honest and not let that get to you. So I again just be brave. It's okay. It's okay to also say no.
Yeah, and that actually is an interesting point because when we are different, we almost have to be advocators. I mean, we're expected,
Absolutely.
yeah, to be these polite people, wonderful people who's willing to talk about it. And sometimes we have our bad days and we don't want to talk about it. But on the other hand, education is first and foremost the most important thing we can do in helping people to understand that there's really nothing wrong with us. And actually, I've seen there are birthmarks that are quite beautiful. I look at it almost as an enhancement rather than anything detrimental. So, and I think anything that makes you stand out is
Well, and again, people have, people that have birthmarks, they can choose to wear makeup, but I don't because, again, like I've gotten so used to talking about my birthmark that I'm like, why am I gonna hide this if I talk about it all the time and I'm proud of my birthmark? But again, like some people just like to play with makeup because it's fun and they get to do different expressions of their personality. And some people, it's a confidence tool, and that's what I did my thesis on is, the use of cosmetics and if it makes a difference in self-esteem. And honestly, it just doesn't really. It really just depends on the person. Um, so, it's we're all different. We're all people.
yeah. I mean, personally, I find makeup to be too much work. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on that. Um, but anyway, yeah, actually, I wish I'd known you'd done your master's thesis on that because that's a whole interesting topic just by itself. But I tend to agree. I think people can certainly use makeup as an enhancement, but they don't necessarily. It it's kind of like some people have surgery to they think it's making them look better, but the reality is it's really not. It doesn't even necessarily make them feel any better. They think it's going to solve their problems, but it doesn't. And maybe some people it helps a little, but that's a whole another issue. So, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap the show. And again, I just want to say thank you so much, Kaylin, for jumping on with me. I've really appreciated having you on. My next episode of Friendly the Mirror, to my knowledge, I should say, I'm going to have to qualify that from now on because I'm going to doing these shows once a month just because of the amount of work they are. So it is my belief that my next episode will be on March 22nd. It'll be at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday, and my guest is going to be Pauline Beal, and we're going to be talking about the challenges of adversity. So I hope that you'll be able to join us then. Another thing to remember is while you always have to try to keep in mind that it's important to be kind to others, it's also important to remember to be kind to yourself. I'm author and professional speaker Don Shaw, and I will see you next time.
We are love, we are one. We are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are peace, we are war. We are how we treat each other, nothing more. We are how we treat each other, nothing more. We are how we treat